All right, I'm so excited today because this is our first in-person podcast with a guest in the flesh. This is wonderful. And I have Lauren Lewis here, who is a Colorado-based yoga teacher, retreat leader, plant-based chef, and culinary educator. Lauren believes that by intuitively attending to our most basic needs, breath, movement, and healing food, we can show up fully to live our most vital lives. Lauren's approachable style embodies the mantra, think less, feel more. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
I was
I'm
saying
so glad
before,
to be
I
here.
was like, I'm fangirling. You're here in person. We get to hang out.
Oh, I feel the same way.
So I take Lauren's classes at Yoga Pod, which if you're ever in Boulder, Colorado, or if you live in Boulder, I think is one of the most amazing communities and studios I've ever stepped foot in.
Mm,
It's some vortex in there of
totally.
energy.
Totally.
It's so cool. And it has changed my life since we moved here. I was going through a really hard time and I was having some depression. It was the first year we lived here. I was sort of finding my place and I had left everything behind and I didn't really know like who can I be friends with? Where can I go? And I reminded myself that the last time I was in a very similar place when I left New York and went to Philly,
Mhm.
I joined a yoga studio and my whole life changed and my
Oh,
energy changed. And it was like, duh, you
yeah,
go back to yoga. And I
totally.
hadn't practiced for like close to a decade, Lauren, like
Wow.
regularly, like here
That's
and there, just
amazing.
jumping in a class. And now it's been over 2 years and I'm at that studio like on average 4 or 5 times per week.
Wow. I remember when you showed up on the scene and I was like, "Who's this amazing
Oh,
lady?" Yeah.
thank you. There's something special, not just
Yeah.
going on in that studio, of course, where you get to, teach, but with yoga in general. I know we
Yeah.
can talk a little bit about that. Like, what is happening when you are
Yeah.
doing this practice of breath and movement and introspection and all the things? But I thought today we could talk a little bit about how do we release self judgment?
Mm.
Big one.
Yeah.
And I would love to hear more about your story because I know that you've really walked this path and have received so many gifts from going down a lot of judgment and then
Mhm.
to where you are. So I would
Mm.
love to hear about like where are you from? How did you end up here?
Thank you. Yeah, I think yoga is the most powerful tool for healing that I've found, which is why I'm so committed to the practice and to sharing it. It's certainly not to me about forward folds or chaturangas. I love those things. I think building physical strength builds a little bit of mental strength, and there's something there. But I think the thing that holds me, I think, for my entire lifetime moving forward in this ancient practice is its capability to help us heal. And we all need healing. Every single person has gone through trauma, varying degrees. Every single person has had a incredible journey. I was on the drive here thinking about my story and how, in some ways, my challenges are nothing compared to so many of my students. And yet, I've had significant challenges. And so, one of the privileges I think of my work is really getting to know my students and getting to know their stories and realizing how much everyone is holding all the time. So, I feel like building, as you said, this community where we can see each other for all of it, with it, all of it, is really, really impactful and just in and of itself valuable. My grandmother always used to say, "You need fellowship." And her fellowship was the Russian Orthodox Church. And I was like, when I was younger, I was like, that's probably not where I'm going to find mine. Although now in retrospect, I probably could have found it there or anywhere. But what I ended up finding it with is yoga in the yoga community. I know that we've shared some of these similarities, and yoga has been my path to healing. I grew up in a wonderful family, but I had so much external input about how my body should look. And I also think that I used my body as like a tool of aggression when I didn't know how to process big feelings. So there wasn't a pathway to feeling in a healthy way. So I just internalized it, which led to really self aggressive behaviors, particularly bulimia, but others too, just forms of addiction and not self love. And in fact, I don't think I heard the word self love until probably I started yoga when I was 17. So I was like, wait, there's this whole other language around how we can tend to ourselves and care for ourselves. And it was so new to me that sometimes when I find myself being aggressive now, after all these years, I just remind myself, God, look at how far you've come. It's not perfect. I'm not doing it perfectly, but from where I started to where I am now over 26 years, I have made such incredible strides in understanding and caring for myself in a way that allows me to do the work I want to do. And I think that ultimately that's my goal, is to love myself enough that it doesn't get in the way of my showing up in a big way. Because when we're just picking ourselves apart or beating ourselves up for what comes out of our mouth or laying in bed with regret about how we could have done things differently, it is so depleting.
Mm.
And so it's like, I don't know, how can we allow mistakes and forgive ourselves over and over again so that we can keep putting one foot in front of the other in terms of contributing, which you guys are certainly doing, like making such a big contribution by sharing your passion for healing, ultimately, it seems like to me.
Yeah. There's this permissiveness, though, that we have to be willing to step into when it comes to loving ourselves. And
Mhm.
that's really hard, I find, when the messaging
Yeah.
around us is that of, it's not enough, you're not good enough,
Mhm.
you have to try harder.
All because we need to sell you something. You're not good
Right.
enough. We have something that's gonna help you fix it.
100%.
Very much so. And I didn't know that when you're young. I think I remember I was listening to another podcast that you were on sharing your story, and you mentioned having some of these feelings around your body when you were 10.
Mhm.
And I was 12 when
Mhm.
I remember having my first thoughts around, well, this is just not right. The way I look isn't right. And
Right.
I need to
Well,
do something about it. I need to fix this. I
yeah.
need to eat salad instead of a
Yeah.
sandwich,
Yeah.
at 12 years old. And I have all of these journals that I wrote from the time I was 12. I probably stopped really journaling like daily when I was around 20, around when I stepped into the
Mhm.
healing, actually
Wow.
stopped journaling a
Wow.
lot. But so many of those pages are filled with self hatred and
Yeah.
disgust for myself. Like,
Mhm.
where do we learn to feel so much shame around, and it wasn't even that my parents never told me that I was fat or
Mhm.
shamed me.
Mhm.
I somehow picked up on this
Yeah.
just from everything around me.
It's true. The messaging is everywhere. And I have a son. I sometimes am almost, I don't know if this is right to say, but I would be even more concerned if I had a daughter about the messages that I was sending to her because of the messages I received.
Mhm.
But I'm still so aware of what I say to my son. He said to me, I might have shared this before, I'm not sure, but he said to me, Mom, when he was little, like 6, when I grow up, am I going to have a soft body like you or a hard body like dad? And in the moment, I was like, I could have felt internally like, oh
Yeah.
God, my body,
Yeah.
but instead I was like, oh my God, my soft body is his safe place. And what if that was the reference point from the beginning? And so I said, oh, there's a lot of things that, there's a lot of factors, and I don't know what your body will be like, but it's beautiful. Or he'll say something about the softness of my body, and I'll say, thank you. Just like never did I hear those things growing up, that that's good. And I think we get it from different places. Our family, for me, certainly my family was a part of that, but the messaging from the media is over the top. I can't even watch it.
It's so over the top right now.
Yeah.
The last couple of weeks, our last podcast was me ranting for 30 minutes
Nice.
about how I can't take it in a way. And I feel like almost this toxic sludge is being put into my body as I'm watching things on social media. And I know that this is my own doing. It's my own addiction, really, the
Yeah.
intake of how much I spend on there and disassociate in ways and sort of like numb out by just scrolling and it's not that you're trying to compare and despair
Yeah.
when you're doing it. It's just what is happening to your brain
Yeah.
and it's being pushed on you. And I'm just a human. I'm not I don't have it's like a little bit like kryptonite for me.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
able to fully like
yeah,
disconnect from it.
yeah.
And so just last night we downloaded this app which I need to set up, which is gonna make it so that I can't go on there after a certain time and it will not let me access these apps
That's
because
awesome.
I need to it also really disconnects you from like your own knowing and intuition
Yeah,
when you're just looking at what everybody else is doing and everybody else is shoving down your throat.
yeah, yeah. It's amazing.
It's really hard to be where your feet are if you're just in the phone and looking at where that person is. They're in the mountains skiing. That person's in the Bahamas, and
Yeah,
it's like you're in a great place right now too. You know,
yes.
Lauren's in Costa Rica on her retreat.
Yes.
you're right,
Yeah,
right.
That
I
looks
was.
nice.
It was nice.
We're going there on Friday.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
That's
So,
exciting.
yeah, we're really
Oh
excited
my
about
gosh.
that.
Yeah, I mean, part of the yoga, the philosophy of the practice is one of my most interesting parts. Like, I am so fascinated that it was potentially 3,500 years ago that much of the context of this practice was written in northern India. And it's still so applicable. And one of the elements about this is releasing our grasp on our attachments about what we've been. Well, maybe we'll edit this out because I'm like digressing.
No, I love it. I think the history is I'm such a history buff with this kind of stuff to think of these like ancient Eastern practices that are
Yeah.
now they're not that they're making their way here because they've been here for a while, but I feel like people need this right now more than ever.
Yeah.
They're being integrated a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I meant to say was one of the practices is saucha. Saucha means cleanliness or purity, and we often think of that as like if we clean our bodies and clean our houses, our minds can be more clear. But in these times, saucha is also cleaning up what we're taking in. So
Mm.
using an app to block it or whatever we need to clean up because all that we're ingesting impacts us. And so it becomes like our responsibility and our discipline to choose deliberately. My family has the news on all the time. And when I go
Yeah.
visit them, I'm like, this would be so negative for my life
Like
if I'm,
right before bed,
yes,
like
like
just
blaring.
yeah.
Yeah.
And you become habituated to it. I was just listening to something talking about sleep and how better sleep hygiene and how if you're someone that rolls over and you immediately go on your phone and check messages or scroll on
Hmm.
up some sort of platform that your body it becomes habituated to that so it will actually wake you up to do it.
Wow. I
So
feel
Really?
that. That scares me.
and it will affect like your awake time. Like you might even wake up before your alarm sometime because your body's just like, let's do that thing.
Let's go check the feeds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've felt my phone pulling me out of like intimate moments, literally, where I'm like, I can feel like a call toward it. It's so bizarre. And watching my son, who's 9, grow up with screens, I'm so fiercely protective of his relationship with them. And yet I let myself kind of go bananas and it's not good for me.
We talked about it on a recent podcast where a few times I just left my phone in the car, not
Hmm.
on purpose. I just left it there because I was
Hmm.
using it as GPS. And I went into the restaurant and I didn't feel that pull to go to my pocket, and it was like,
Yeah.
even if you have it in your pocket, out of sight, out of mind, it's still, you're thinking about it. It's like,
Yes.
it's running in the background of your
Wow,
brain.
it's so true. I haven't really talked about this or thought about it, but
Well, and the
yeah.
scary thing is that there's some speculation. It seems like it will happen in some way that we're going to become integrated with some of these devices
Yeah.
eventually. I mean, we could choose to,
Yeah.
right? It's like you can choose to get Botox or not, like
Yeah.
me right now. I'm really not I'm choosing the wrinkle life.
Yeah, same. Same.
But it's
You
like,
accept
but
it. You're
yeah,
done.
I'm accepting this aging process.
Well, that's the next thing. I mean, that's so interesting because I was just thinking about that when we're talking about how we've healed in so many ways. And now the next thing is getting comfortable getting older. That's like we're going to have to begin the practice of self-love. I mean, I'm witnessing a lot of my friends really feel the the
The
cat's
cat,
like cracking me up.
the cat is snoring so loud, and it's like he's almost like yes, I agree.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to be putting my practice to the test again in this next decade.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I feel like most committed to or certain of in this process of finding love for ourselves is that it's not going to be done through more of the same, which is, damn it, I don't love myself. I suck. Darn, I'm just talking poorly to myself, like beating ourselves up for not being perfect with it or linear on the path or regressing. Sometimes there's just regressive behaviors, and those are our real opportunities to forgive ourselves and be like, wow, I'm just human and here I am doing this again. One of my teachers says, "Isn't that adorable?"
Hmm.
Isn't it adorable that here I am being human and thinking I've come so far and spending half a yoga class looking at my waist or my wrinkles or my, whatever. And the more that we can practice in real time, catching ourselves and loving ourselves with those behaviors, I think that's kind of the scaffolding to grow.
Yeah. You're making me think when that happens because I'm there too. There are lots of yoga classes where the entire time it's just the chatter in my mind and I
Mhm.
just can't be there.
Yeah.
Just cannot get to presence even for
Yeah.
a moment. And then it's the beating myself up like, "Ugh, look at you. You can't even turn this off." And then
Mm.
being like angry with myself and upset versus eventually I get to a place, I think by the last 10 minutes where it's like, well, just accept it. It's like,
Yeah.
this is what
Yeah.
happened,
Yeah, that's what the class was
but you
for.
showed up anyways.
Right.
But what you're making me think of are I really love a therapy practice called internal family
Yeah.
systems, where we have all of these different parts of
Mhm.
ourselves. And so you're making me think that like these parts, they never die.
Yeah.
They're always a part of us.
Mhm.
It's just that sometimes they're quieter at other times, and
Mhm.
we have other parts that are stepping in and are really confident. And then when we have moments in our life where we regress, like you said, then that part can show back up. But then you have this other almost like umbrella part
Mhm.
that looks over all of it
Mhm.
that can say, oh, there you are.
Mhm.
And it's okay.
Yeah.
I don't need to attach to this. I can just observe it and be with it. Easier said than done, of course, but
Mhm.
I found that in my healing journey over the years, I'm able to do that more.
Yes.
Where if a part of me comes out that I'm like, "Oh, wow,
Right.
they're back."
Yeah.
I'm like, "What's happening?" Like, how can we create a little bit more compassion around that versus being so angry and upset with ourselves that we, like, regressed in some way?
Totally. And healing can't happen in shame or darkness. And these parts of ourselves that are present need to feel love to heal. Like, I see you and I know why you're like that. My part of myself that I can find hating my body or wanting to be self aggressive in exchange for appearing together. I think that's something that I've noticed is I want to be easy. I don't want someone have to take care of me. I want to be like very capable. And so if I'm feeling something that's going to pull me toward an emotion that I'm uncomfortable with, I internalize it. And then I have this part of myself that kind of just, I think of the Lorax factory, like puffing away, just like processing my uncomfortable feelings. And that little part of myself is the part that's been bulimic and used substances. And it's like, how do let that part just feel the pain? So I agree with you that, like, instead I could turn toward it and say, what do you need me to know?
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of healing that can be done through the lens of welcoming whatever presents itself as a teacher.
Absolutely. Rob Loud once said something in a class that I'll never forget because it clearly was something I really needed as, like, a tool,
Mhm.
and it was get comfortable with awkwardness. Can you just let yourself feel awkward and not try to fix it and make it less awkward? And that's something that's so interesting because I even said to Lauren before we got on, I'm really trying not to fill the space. And forgive me, listeners, if I talk too much about myself. I'm very critical of myself. So I know that if I'm doing that, I know I'm doing it. But it's
Oh.
also because perhaps I feel awkward. I'm trying to fill the space. And so it's just something that I'm working on. And it really resonated with me. So I'm like, okay, I guess I don't, that space for some reason makes me feel like I need to do something or show up in some way.
Totally. I mean, I think we do that to each other too. It's hard to be uncomfortable, and one of the ways that I think we do it is when someone's struggling, we try to fix it. Just like
Mhm.
we do that to ourselves. Like, what can I do to help you rather than just be with them in their challenge? And that's something that I've really been practicing because I'm a fixer.
Me too.
You are.
Yeah.
It's like, what resource do I have for you right now? And what if people just need to be, like Rob said, in the uncomfortable or the awkward or the space between the good and the brutal?
Yeah. Or it being okay to tell somebody that you're with, I don't want you to try and fix it. Sometimes we don't have that awareness in the moment when we're just feeling our feelings, but
Mhm.
I've definitely said that to Mackie before. It's like, don't try to make this better right now. There's nothing that you can really do. I just need to have this moment of feeling whatever is going to come
Yeah.
through. And it's not always pretty.
Yeah.
I think too, I know for me that I'm very self conscious in that way because I grew up with a lot of mental illness in my family. So, like, I really put this label on myself of being the together one.
Mhm.
And my mom would even say, like, I don't have to worry about you because you're okay.
Right.
That's what she would always say to me,
Yeah.
which then it's like, oh, I guess I have to be okay.
Right.
That's
Forever
the
okay.
expectation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
forever okay and
Yeah.
put together.
Yeah.
And like you said, have this appearance of holding it all and being okay, even if you're crumbling on the inside.
Yep.
Like people, when I would share with people, oh, I have panic attacks back in the day and like
Mhm.
things like that, which I still even had. I had a panic attack. When was that? In the winter. This one, that
Right around
Christmas
Christmas.
party.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Just came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Just it was like, oh, we're back, you know?
Yeah.
But I had such a different relationship with it this time than
Good.
before because I let myself feel the feelings of it instead of trying to
Yeah.
push it away and labeling myself as something's wrong with me. It's like, no, this is just something that needs to be felt right
Yeah.
now. Um, but where was I going with that? I went on a tangent. Just yeah, just the labeling of that we put on ourselves of
Oh,
like trying
to just
to fit.
fix it, like
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
instinct to fix anything that comes up. And yeah, I agree with you. And also, like, some of the ways that we're unable to sit with discomfort, we just keep ourselves so incredibly busy. I do that too,
Yeah.
and I'm guessing you guys might as well. Just
Yeah.
It's my default.
yeah,
It's really like my default.
and that's just as numbing as all these other ways that society sees very clearly as problematic.
Yeah.
I mean, it might not be as dangerous as some of the ways that many of us have or people have choose to not feel, but busyness is like the go-to for so many of us. And that's another thing that I love about yoga so much is just like it asks us to take an hour and well now these everyone's wearing Apple Watches so they're not even like away from their phone
Yeah.
but like an hour away from the screens and the digital input, an hour to be in our bodies, which is a courageous act. Like you have to witness what comes up. And even if you don't want to at present, like you were saying, how you can go a whole class with just being unkind to yourself. I can too, but we're still at least taking witness to that. The practice is almost required, or some mindfulness practice in these times to be able to stay in relationship with our bodies. And our bodies hold this deep information that we really need to access to stay on our path. And if we don't check in with our bodies, whether it be meditation or yoga or just finding rest and stillness time in nature, we're going to find ourselves off track. I think it's just the way it is.
hmm When you're saying checking in with our body, I never really think of it like that in the sense of it's more like this internal practice of checking in with like yourself. But is that what you mean when you're saying in with your body? Because I think some people think about their bodies as being this physical thing that
That's a
they're
yeah, good
doing.
distinction. I think more of it like our bodies, meaning our intuition,
Mm.
our gut instincts, our heart's desires, our not necessarily like our hip flexors or our knees, although it's good to check in with those parts too,
Yeah.
because there's a reflection that happens on the mat where I think, oh, wow, this feels way different than it did last week. What am I doing differently? So the physical is important, but I'm speaking more to the emotional, spiritual aspects of the body. And intuition is like, I would say, my guiding force. My culinary background is intuitive cooking, and
Oh,
I've
cool.
spent many, almost 2 decades cooking for other people, and often I have to trust my intuition to know what they need because sometimes they don't know. And there's an energetic exchange that can happen between us where I'm like, "Oh, maybe you need something more grounding, or maybe you need something more," and it also we can connect with the seasons and cook in that way, but intuition and using our body's wisdom to make the choices that we need to make versus using the external input to make the choices we need to make is an important practice that is worthy of cultivation.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about that with food? I think this is really powerful, and it's actually how Mackie and I got together. Is
Oh,
is we had a I'll never forget, we had a conversation about both being gluten-free at the time, and nobody was gluten-free. We were, like, trying this gluten-free thing.
oh, that's cute.
Was that, like, 2012?
2010?
10? Wow.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, wow. And then we both went to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition.
Oh, wow.
And that's how we really connected and, like, fell in love with, well, food is medicine, and it really can open up your mind too. Yoga is, I feel like, an entry point to this, but food really is as well.
Yeah. Well, food was for sure my inroad. Was Christina Perello the chef at IIN? I'm trying to
The
remember.
name sounds super familiar.
I just remember really being curious about that cooking school, and I went to another culinary school here in Boulder called the School of Natural Cookery, which I love so much, and it was brick and mortar, and now it's online.
Yeah.
And then I was an instructor there for a long,
Oh,
long
cool.
time, and I remember being tuned into where you guys went and being curious because there were very few more holistic based culinary schools.
Yeah.
Um,
It so opened up our eyes to what's happening in the landscape of food and the big agriculture and big pharma and just how
totally.
scary it is if you don't really know what's
Mhm.
going on. And like Mackie said, everyone's trying to sell something to you and have you buy something. And it's the same with the
Yeah.
agenda around like how to eat.
Yeah.
And it's very confusing for I had a client yesterday and she's just like, I don't know what to believe. I don't know,
Right.
how do we eat? I have no idea. Social media is telling me all these influencer people,
Yeah.
and I'm like, well, there isn't one way, and it's very individual.
It's
So it
like
sounds
what feels energizing and good for you? What allows for like healthy elimination and plenty of energy and
yeah,
it is.
but that's trusting your own guide and intuition.
Yeah.
That's
And
not
paying attention.
that's paying attention, yeah, and doing some I call it like experimentation, like
Mhm.
fun experimentation of food and things. But how was that for you just learning about the energetics of food? And it sounds like you tune into your clients of what they need. Like even just you saying grounding food, it's so interesting because I said to Mackie
Mhm.
earlier, I'm cold, I don't want cold food. My
Right.
body wants warm food.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
That
know?
that's pretty intuitive. Um I get super excited about this topic, and this food and yoga together were the two things that were the most impactful on my healing journey and just my life's work. And they are side by side and interwoven in so many ways because ultimately they both give us life force, like self awareness and energy. And they both impact our ability to do our work without losing steam. And so the food piece and the yoga piece are so connected. And I've taught for many years, I taught the yoga of cooking at Boulder Valley School District.
Oh,
I had a
cool.
course for lifelong learning, but the foundation of the culinary education that I got was in macrobiotic cooking. And macrobiotic oftentimes is thought of as a very limited, like seaweed and brown rice and kimchi and azuki beans or something, which are all good. But it's much more than that. Macrobiotics means great life. And so the great life diet basically means eating in a way that sustains a great life. And the foundation is paired with traditional Chinese medicine. And um, so the elements, looking at nature to teach us. So, like you said, the one way to look at energetics is if there's a lot of solar yang energy, which just means sun, then you don't need the sun or that from your food.
Mhm.
Mm.
But if you are not getting that, you need it from your food. So if I'm in Hawaii in the summer and I can eat salads every day and be sustained, and if I'm in Colorado in the winter, I need stews and things that have a lot of fire from the oven. So that's like kind of a simple way to explain food energetics. But there's also the energetics of the chef. Is it a pissed off person in a kitchen getting underpaid, like in a restaurant cooking for you? Or is it like your mom? Your Am I
Yeah.
cooking for my grandmother? I feel like I used to use the comparison also. If I'm cooking for my child who's got all this energy and versus my grandmother who's 100 and like what's the difference? It's how much salt I'm going to put in. Like an older person that's pretty sedentary needs way less. An vibrant mobile person needs more salt
Mhm.
and like big flavors, and you just kind of meet the person where they are with what you're serving them. And also I've had clients, like I said, that are just all over the place, like in the Ayurveda Vata, like bouncing
Mhm.
off the walls. And so pressure cooking their food or long slow cooking techniques can actually bring their body into balance. So that's another piece of energetics. And then the last piece, there's a few, but the last piece I'll mention is how a vegetable grows, which is really similar. So in macrobiotics, you want to use as much of the food as possible. If we just use like the beet and not the beet greens, you don't get the whole energetics of the beet where the root holds the energy and the greens have this quick acting energy. And there's just this difference. But if you use the whole thing, like if you make a sauteed beet greens with a roasted beets on top,
Mm.
you'll have the whole beet. And there's just something about whole food cookery that impacts the whole body. So energetic cuisine or energetic cooking is just literally taking into account all aspects, seasonality, the person you're cooking for, that stuff.
That's so cool. What do you recommend for pitta people?
I guess it depends on the season, but there's much more in Ayurveda that can speak to the
Okay.
doshas
Yeah.
that I only have a tiny bit of information. So I think it's more, but you could be more in balance with both,
Got it.
is what I think. Like you're less extreme on one end or the other.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so
I feel this, and this is really inspiring me with food because I was just thinking today, I've been in a real rut with my own like nutrition as far as just energetically eating things that I think could really support me. And I'm become more sensitive to foods as I've gotten older.
mhm,
And to the point where it's like my body is saying, you have to change things. Like there's no continuing this. My sleep is something that's been really affected
mhm.
by food. And as much as I love chocolate,
Yeah,
it's like
same.
I I can't even have it anymore
Mhm.
if it's after 2 o'clock in the
Wow.
afternoon. I just cannot do it. And I've had to really have this like loving, like completion with it. I'm
Yeah,
sorry, I can't eat you.
yeah,
I can eat you at noon
yeah,
You
after
can have it for
I
breakfast.
can have
yeah.
you for breakfast.
I
But I
love that.
just, at this stage in my life at least, like stimulants and things are
Mhm.
really affected me. And
Yeah.
I need more grounding foods at night
Mhm.
to help me have a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
So, and I do
Yeah.
think it's a multitude of things, all the stimulation that I'm getting throughout the day, being with so many people all the time, being
Yes.
in a room where you're with 50 people.
Yeah.
I'm not in a room with 50 people, but just having so many interactions with different clients throughout the day and
Yeah.
different conversations, like I have to find ways to ground and come down from that.
Yeah. I mean, slow sipped creamy, not cream, but creamy vegetable soups or
Mm,
broths are
mm,
really good for opening the body to like the present. I remember my teacher saying if you want someone to really receive the nourishment of a meal, serve them a small bowl of miso soup or a broth or something that can just let their body relax so that the benefits come. And there are definitely ways that we can practice it. And maybe we're getting more sensitive as we get older, or maybe we're just becoming even more aware. Yeah, it's complex because I can override all of my awareness in exchange for like one darn good piece of chocolate, or, I'm
Sure.
like, I have what I called my cave girl, which is like, I can do what I want, like pounding on my chest to my own demise,
Yeah.
like, no
Oh,
one can
that's
stop
me.
me. You.
Ask him. When it comes to, like, dessert
Yeah.
and things like that,
Yeah.
I'm like, "It's fine. It's
Yeah.
fine. It's Friday night. Who
Yeah.
cares? Tomorrow's Saturday,"
Totally.
But then I'm like, "I had horrible sleep last night. I feel
Yeah.
horrible."
Yes.
But that's okay too, right? We
Yeah.
love all these aspects of ourselves, and that's a
Exactly.
part of the self-compassion. How do we not judge and have shame around that?
Yeah.
When we're doing things that we clearly know, okay, that's not maybe the best choice.
Yeah. Isn't it adorable?
Isn't it adorable that
Yeah.
you wanna do that? But I think if you're able to create that relationship to these parts of yourself and take a step back, you do have a little more agency to
Hmm.
decide,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, even if you make the choice that's like less in service of your wellness, pausing and catching yourself like, do I want to do this right now? I know that the outcome is going to be this, and yet I'm still considering doing it for the momentary enjoyment, if that's the case. And then choosing, even that's power.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Previously, we might have just not even noticed the negative impact or, yeah, done it before we gave ourselves a
The
choice. Yeah,
unconscious act of
unconscious.
doing it,
Yeah.
yeah. In the philosophy of yoga that you've been learning throughout the years, are there certain aspects of it that you just love so much? Like some of the different teachings?
Yeah, the definitely. I feel like I love them all,
Mhm.
and I keep finding more and more, but the foundation of the beginning of the eight-limbed path written in the Yoga Sutras, which is one of the primary texts referred to in our current yoga culture, although there are many, is ahimsa, and ahimsa is nonviolence. And himsa translates to striking down. So ahimsa is to not. And our original thought might be externally, like, how do I not cause violence in the world? Which is, I think, an incredibly important thing for us all to consider, and especially where there's so much violence in the world. But with most of us, it's more about how can I not cause violence to myself? And that is through choosing lifestyles that serve our wellness, and it's also the way that we speak to ourselves and dial back our busyness in exchange for rest when we need rest. And there's so many ways. And I do it all the time, but I'm always watching it. Like, how does this feel? Is it violent toward me? And oftentimes the answer is yes. But again, it's just the awareness
Yeah.
and the subtle shifts over time that accumulate toward creating an internal environment that is full of compassion and love, because our internal environment paints our life. If we're angsty or self-aggressive, the the way that we perceive things and people reflects that.
It's very, very true. I love how you say that. The internal is painting your life
Mhm.
and how you perceive things and how you show up. The perceiving things is really interesting, I find. Like, we all have our own perspectives, and
Mhm.
those perspectives are really generated by your internal sense of self and your own love for yourself and
Mhm.
worth. And when I'm judging a lot, it's because I'm really judging myself. And then
Yes.
I'm just in this place of judgment. And when I'm loving myself, I find that I have more capacity to just be loving towards
Totally.
other things. And it's really a hard truth
Mhm.
to see that in yourself.
Yeah.
When you're like, I really can tell that when I feel positive about somebody else's success.
Mhm.
And this is a journey and this is not linear by any means, but I've definitely, even since I was very little, I had a lot of envy.
Yeah.
I remember being 3 and having envy.
Wow.
I remember this moment, I went to have a play date with this girl, and she had all these dress up clothes, and my mom picked me up, and I was just so angry.
Yeah.
Why does she get to have all of these things and I don't get to have these things?
Yeah.
It's sort of like a life theme that
Yeah.
followed me, like a lesson that I'm just supposed to, like, work through, And so when I'm in more self-love, I don't have that envy. I can feel so happy about other people's success, but when I'm really critical and judging, I notice that I'm just like, "Ugh,
Yeah.
why are they're not even cool. Why are they getting all this attention?" You
That's so
know?
vulnerable of you to share.
Yeah, it's really one of the just nasty things that show up for me. It's not something I'm proud of. I
It's
would, you
so
know.
common. I mean, that's just so true. There's another tenet of the practice called santosha,
Mm,
and santosha means contentment. And contentment isn't just like happiness, it's being with all of it. And when we practice that, which is like actively practiced through gratitude, which is so like cliche in yoga, but also one of the most important things we can do to see how much you do have, to notice all the beautiful things you have. I'm always practicing this with my son because he also feels strong envy.
mhm.
Can we lay down in bed and make a list of all the incredible things in our life that we feel grateful for? That literal practice of gratitude helps us see that we have enough, and then we're not seeking it outside of ourselves. But yes, totally. I love you that you shared that, and it's hard to not project our internal scarcity or wishes or discontentment onto other people. And so the work is always that it begins within.
Yeah.
And that, damn it, like I hated that for so long. And yoga teachers are always like, the time on the mat isn't just for this time on the mat. And it's not just selfish, it's for everyone in your life. And it took me like 20 years to believe it. I was like,
Mhm.
okay, it's true that every time I show up and practice contentment and nonviolence and self-awareness, svadhyaya, all these aspects of the practice, every time I show up, it ultimately helps have a ripple effect into my relationships. So I think it's really cool that we can at least name our
Because it
patterns.
really only takes one person to make a huge impact. I mean, look at the impact of some singular people right now in our culture, like
Mhm.
Elon Musk, for
Yeah.
example. Look at that impact of one human
Yeah.
being. He's just one person.
Yeah.
So we do all matter and make a big difference in
Yes.
how we're doing things.
Yes.
And just compare yourself to Elon anytime you think, I
Right.
don't like we're just all the same. We're all just one person.
Yeah.
I love all this that you're sharing, like cultivating this practice of internal awareness and gratitude and nonviolence towards ourselves and obviously other people, and just showing up in a more loving way and releasing some of that shame and guilt and fear.
Mhm.
That's a big one that I'm trying to work through is fear.
Mhm.
So many fears of just being me. It's really hard to just it's like I think I said this to a coach and I felt really weird saying this, but they were like, "What do you wanna get out of working together?" And I was like, "I wanna be myself." And it's like I don't even necessarily sometimes know who I am.
Yeah, I
Be
mean, that's the such a that's I you're not alone in that feeling.
mm,
I think we're all trying to uncover our true selves through the muck, through the masks, through the self-protection, and some of it was survival, like literally saving our own lives through protective mechanisms. And to disarm and to really step forward vulnerably is wickedly scary when we've programmed ourselves to believe that we needed to show up in a certain way in order to be loved or accepted or taken care of or successful or even be able to pay our bills.
we're all part of that system in a way that we can't disconnect from. I was just thinking you're saying in order to pay our bills, I have to show up in certain ways to make my living. I
Mhm.
can't just disappear into the wilderness and hope for the best.
Yeah.
I don't even have those survival skills to,
Yep.
And so in a way, we're all a part of this system that I think that we could individually each try to change a little bit and more collectively to decide that we need to change some things because it's so interesting how when you talk to people, so many people are so discontent and unhappy with the systems that they're a part of, and yet here we are.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. There's a book called Rest is Resistance that I just started reading, and its premise, from what I've gathered so far, is that the industriousness of us, of literally using our bodies in this capitalistic culture, is part of this system of patriarchy and capitalism that we don't even want to be a part of, but we still buy into. The more we do, the more worthy we are. And so, literally dialing back that and even just resting
Mhm.
is like radical, which is crazy because
It
I
is.
totally am a victim of that. I mean,
Yeah.
I put that on myself. Like, I'm so tired, but I can't. I got somewhere to
Well,
be.
it's like I've said this before to you, and I'm kind of reevaluating me saying this because it's like it's just sometimes we just parrot things we hear, and then like, do I actually believe that, or is that just something that like I've been told? And no, I've always said, oh, if I'm not growing, you're dying. If you're not moving, if you can't rest, like no sleep for
Yeah.
the what is it? What's the term for the weary? I don't know.
Yeah.
But all of these like terms, and I'm like, is that true? Because I don't really know if that's fulfilling to be if so I think I'm like thinking about this out loud. I think part of me has thought I've got to really seize the day. Like every day is this opportunity to do as much as I can and I want to just squeeze the juice out of life. Like that's
Mhm.
part of it. But then if you're just doing things for the sake of doing them and you're not and you like you said you're escaping by doing these things and it's another way of not being present in a way. It's a really constructive way of not being aware.
Right.
Right?
Well,
You
I'm
can
not sure. I
yeah,
think it depends.
depends. But
And so
yeah,
I'm not like wagging my finger at busyness. It's like
sure.
sometimes the doing is amazing.
Yeah.
I think only you could know, is it a distraction or is it authentically what your heart
I think it's
desires?
a distraction in what I've gathered, not all the time, but some of the time. And then when I'm taking a break, again, there's this anxiety because it's not my usual,
Mhm.
but it can be really beautiful and special and memorable. And I had that moment last week when I went hiking by myself and I listened to the little voice that said, sit here for 20 minutes instead of like continuing to just move my body,
Mhm.
which is that's productive, right? We're moving, we're getting exercise. It's like, well, this is productive too.
Yeah.
And it was one of the most magical, special moments I've had in a long time. Just closing my eyes and letting sun be on me and just like listening to the birds. So,
That's beautiful.
but yeah, rest is radical. That was radical for me. That's not
I'm with
my
you.
usual.
Yeah. I struggle with the same challenge.
Yeah.
I do, but I'm aware. I'm aware that we've been taught to believe that one thing is valuable and one thing is not, and I know that they're both required, the
Well,
doing and the rest.
that's what we've been taught with everything, right? This is valuable, this isn't.
Yeah.
This will get you there, this won't. It's
Yeah.
just this very duality like perspective.
Yeah. Totally.
I think in a sense, if you think about if you're not growing, you're dying, you could say that your rest is growing in a lot of ways, right? Like your rest is allowing your body to rebuild, your rest is allowing your growth mentally
Yes.
and emotionally.
Yeah. Reframing our slow times to being and holding value is a big deal.
But it's knowing yourself, right? Because then there's also, I've worked with clients where that becomes an excuse of, I'm resting, I have to rest today. And then there's never any action.
Yeah.
So it's really knowing yourself. It isn't one or the other, like you're saying.
100%. My teacher always used to say, it depends." Like someone's like,
Mhm.
"Are onions good for me? Is meat good for me?" And the answer is always, "It depends."
Yeah.
And it's such a frustrating answer to give people,
Yeah.
but the truth is only you can feel what it feels like in your body when this is happening and know what you're really doing, with the do I need rest or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beginning to trust ourselves, knowing that the answers are there, and then the courage and the strength to actually respond in alignment with those. That's the hardest part.
Yes, it is. Especially when it goes against the this is what I should be doing or have to be doing as part of this identity you've created for yourself.
Mm.
if you're pushing back against that a little bit because your intuition is actually saying something that's opposite of that, that is so brave and courageous. And it takes a lot of strength to do that, to choose something different. I
Agreed.
remember that was really big for me when it was healing myself from binge eating. This strength and courage it took to take a different action
Yeah.
than what I had been doing before. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's really tough.
Totally. It was like the hardest thing in my life too.
Yeah. I love this conversation
Yeah.
so much.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
for being so vulnerable and
Anything else that's just been on your heart that you feel like I know you teach all the time. You had a class today.
yeah.
Did you have a theme today?
It was I just got back from retreat,
Yeah.
and what I realized on retreat is every time I go and lead one or go and participate in one is the value of pausing and taking inventory. Are we even moving in the direction we want to be moving in? Because our momentum can carry us forward, and to change course or to be wrong or to make a different choice can only happen with a pause. And so, whether it's one yoga class, a meditation on a rock on a hike, or a retreat to Costa Rica, it's like, how can I find time once in a while as a regimented part of my life schedule to reflect and decide? Because if we're just spinning our wheels in the direction that we think we should be going, we're often just wasting energy and time and not even in alignment with what's true for us. So that was my theme. And that's totally what we just talked about.
Yeah. That's incredible. And I was saying that to Mackie when we go to Costa Rica this Friday, that is what I am doing there. I just
Yeah.
need both of us need a rest and a pause from all of the things that we've been working towards since the planning our move and like launching the new business. It's just been a lot. So we just need to disconnect from that and just be in a totally different environment and take a little bit of a rest.
Good.
Yeah.
And celebrate all you've created, I hope.
Yeah, definitely. And just celebrate the gift of Costa Rica.
Oh
Because
my
as you
gosh.
know,
It's
so
amazing.
we went there once before and
That's
it's
great.
just, gosh, it's so magical there.
It really
I was
is.
watching all of your monkey videos
Oh
and
my gosh.
we love monkeys so much. We're so excited to see monkeys.
We saw a lot of monkeys this trip.
They're so mischievous and,
Yeah.
and cool.
They are
I
cool.
love their energy. It's awesome. Well, Lauren, where can people find you? I know that you teach here in Boulder, and how can people learn more about you and your retreats that you run?
Thank you. My website, laurenlewisyoga.com, is the best place.
Great. I'll link to that in the show notes. And you have so many retreats and they're all sold out already.
Totally.
It's incredible. I'm so in awe of you.
Thank you. I feel so lucky. And it just tells me that people need retreat.
They do, but they also want to be with you and your
Thanks.
energy and what this special sauce that you have.
Thank you.
So
That's very
it's
kind
really
of
cool.
you to
But
say.
yeah, definitely check out Lauren's website for retreats that are upcoming because you host them in different amazing parts of the world.
Yeah, Montana, Mexico, and Costa Rica.
Montana sounds fun.
Oh, it's amazing. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Maybe we'll get in. Wing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you.